Thanks for tuning in to the Beyond Normal podcast, where we highlight minority business owners and founders, and we use this platform to shed light on their entrepreneur journey. Welcome to the Beyond Normal podcast, sponsored by Velour. I'm excited to have another entrepreneur on with you guys today. As you know, we have curated this list with our partners at Velour. So today we actually are excited to have Adrian Cole. He is the founder of VoiceBlast.fm, which is making it easier for creators, influencers, and community builders to connect and engage with their communities using interactive audio. We're going to hop right into these questions because I know Adrian has a lot to share. So starting out, Adrian, can you tell us just a little bit around your background leading up to you starting VoiceBlast.fm?
There was a huge white space with podcasting that creators and their audiences really didn't have a unique way to communicate. You could consume. And when you look at the internet, it's really about like the information highway. But you had this one content medium that was really just mimicking what you see with broadcast radio, and not being interactive. And on both sides of the equation, when you look at what the creators were doing and what the consumers wanted, there was this interaction point that was completely non-existent. And so it was very easy for me to realize, okay, well, this is something that we need to explore. Sort of dove in head first, built a very simple MVP on the web. And then from then on, it kind of just snowballed until we developed into VoiceBlast. And now we're working on our mobile apps, which is going to be launching next week.
Thanks for that breakdown, Adrian. And I know you've lived this podcast life, and so you've pivoted your business a little bit. You know, tell us a little bit. You know, how was that experience pivoting? Like you said, you kind of worked through it a couple times, iterated. How did you go about making that final decision to pivot into what you're doing now with VoiceBlast?
Sure. Yeah. So I wouldn't necessarily call it a pivot. I would say that it was a lot more like smaller iterations as we went along. So when we started off, it was really just streaming the podcast on the web and then having a live chat feature. And that was like the version 1. Now, what we realized was that most consumers are really sort of loyal to their podcast players. And so if someone uses Spotify, they really don't want to change from using Spotify. If they use Castbox, they don't want to really change that. And so that was the first sort of realization that, okay, we're not going to get people to switch over their podcast players. And so then we had to start working out, okay, well, how do we get the consumers of this content and the creators to engage if it's not going to be over the podcast? And by default, then it has to be some other new medium, right? And because this is the audio world, creators are used to creating audio content and listeners are used to consuming audio content. It made sense to just stay in audio and then bring that time down. And by doing that, we sort of created a new format, which is like a 60-second voice blast, which is a sort of an iteration of a podcast. And then you make it more conversational, you make it interactive, and all these different things. Right along the way, we were talking to creators, getting feedback from people who are using the product, and just every week just iterating, really. So there wasn't really a massive pivot point. But in the end, when you look at what we're working on right now versus where we started off, it feels like a pivot, but it's been smaller iterations as we went along.
Thanks for that breakdown, Adrian. And I'm curious, like you kind of touched on it a little bit. People want to interact where they prefer their preferred channels, and we're seeing a lot of the social media outlets that we use right now, they're adopting that audio. They're adding that audio element, kind of the audiogram element. Like, in terms of the trend, like, why do you think, like, why are people gravitating towards that right now at this very moment? Because it seems like the audio experience is exploding across no matter what channel you look at right now.
Yeah. So I think what's important to understand that audio is just the medium, right? what's happened is that people want to connect with other people. It's a thirst that we've had since the start of day, and that's never going anywhere. People want to connect with like-minded people. They want to interact with people that share that same, share the same ideas, have the same interests, and sort of that's the baseline of what's going on right now. Where audio comes into play is that we have never really had the opportunity to sort of speak to the people we meet on the internet, right? So we started off with text-based social networking, and then images, and then video, and now we're sort of going back to audio. Everybody feels like we're going back to audio, but we never were at audio. And so when you compound that with what happened last year with the pandemic and people, having, this extreme loneliness, being not segregated, but being on lockdown and being isolated from the community, people are really craving community. So we have this combination of, folks want to build community. We've now realized the importance of community. And then we have this new exciting medium where people can actually just talk and get to know each other, build community, and also sort of cure parts of the loneliness that's going on right now. And so I think it's a combination of all these different things. And also when you look at podcasting was sort of due for a big jump, and that sort of just put the icing on everything.
Appreciate that. You touched on something there at the end. Podcasting has been around, it seems like, for a couple of decades, but like you said, it's time for that next iteration, that next group of creatives to kind of take it and make it what they're going to make out of it. And so I'm curious though, like you said, last year was like this culmination point. People just sitting down and craving some of those interactions.
Right.
We saw some really big valuations from some of the companies out there. A couple B's were thrown around in terms of some of the new platforms.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to know like how it's been, even though you're fairly early on in the process in terms of like funding your business, since there are a lot of eyeballs, and hopefully the eyeballs are leading to a lot of wallets being open for this area. So how has it been funding the business so far?
Yeah. So last year, I got into two accelerators. One, we got some funding from, the other we didn't. And we got some equity-free money from the Mozilla Foundation. And they ran a program called Fix the Internet, which is sort of this new initiative of companies that really want to create a better place online for society, right? And we kind of fit the bill of what the core of what we're doing sort of matched with the Mozilla. So we got some money there. It wasn't a whole lot. But we sort of used that and bootstrapped all the way up until now. And now when we launch our private beta and we get X amount of users in, then we can go out and fundraise. But look, I think social is hot right now. Everybody thought social was dead. It's not, it's back. And audio is hot. And so we're hoping that we're able to connect with the right people who are also excited about the space and, want to fund a company like what we're doing.
Appreciate that. And you touched on something there around the accelerator route. I'm curious to know, like you mentioned, you got some funding from that. How was it? I guess, was there a big pro going through the accelerator program?
Yes. Yeah. I think that, there's sort of three parts to it. One is the opportunity to work alongside other founders who are building, right? I think that's very, very important. People that you can relate to, people you can talk to, people you can share information with, bounce ideas off of each other, things like that. So that was super important. And then there was the component of having mentors, right? I had 3 mentors. I was very fortunate enough. All of them were, very good product guys. A few of them had exits. And so I had a huge knowledge base to tap into. And then 3, as a company, you're able to walk away with some social proof, right? Like it's Mozilla Foundation, like that's a huge organization. And if they say you're a good business, then like a lot of other people are going to sort of respond to you in a very positive way. And so for us, it was really about, community, mentorship, and obviously getting that stamp of approval, which is then something that we can obviously leverage as we walk into other conversations as well.
Thanks for that explanation, Adrian. You said that was Mozilla. Mozilla.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. And next up, moving a little bit towards running the business, right? I want to ask you a couple, just dig into, how it's been, how the experience of being an entrepreneur has been for you. What's something that you've learned throughout this process that you really wish you would have had at the beginning of your journey being an entrepreneur?
Well, a lot of money is good, but besides that, look, I think that one of the more important things, I'm not going to say it's the most, but I'll put it up there, top 5, is the power of relationships. A lot of people throw this concept around, but I think a very few amount of people fully understand how you go about doing that. Like, how do you, meet someone for the first time and then build a relationship with that person that is then going to help you down the line. And so for me, it's really, everything changed, once I got in contact and connection with the right people. And I would not have been able to do that without these relationships. But I would say the most important thing to get everything started would be to put yourself out there. We live in a world now where, the internet runs on content, right? And so it's very important for you as an entrepreneur, even before the business, to actually start creating content, to actually start telling your story, to actually communicate to the world what you're doing. And a lot of people really don't do that. Like, they're working on really amazing things, but no one knows about it, right? And if no one knows about it, no one's going to care about it. If no one's care about it, you're probably going to quit at some point. And so it's understanding that distribution is probably one of the more important things, and building your brand up, creating your audience, talking to your audience, creating content that they enjoy, they get to know you, I think is one of the really, really, really valuable things that any entrepreneur can and should do at the very start.
Awesome, Adrian. I feel like that was a gem you just dropped right there. That was a mic drop moment, but like you said, people really got to know, what you're doing. I always say, kind of closed mouths don't get fed, but at the same time, you got to really, depending on where you're opening your mouth, where you're spewing out, here's the things that I'm doing. You really got to have a community. You got to have an audience.
You have to have
like you said, you have to have an audience to kind of.
You have to. I mean, honestly, man, like I really wish I understood. I knew that, right? It's not like I didn't know that, right? But knowing and understanding is two different things, right? And so a lot of people know it. They're like, oh yeah, I should definitely build an audience. But do you write newsletters? Are you creating YouTube content? Are you on LinkedIn growing your following? Are you on Twitter tweeting? Like, no. Well, no one knows who you are. Like, there's a lot of people doing what you're doing for sure. Like, there's probably like tens, maybe 20, 30 audio apps right now, but you probably know 1 or 2. You know about what we're doing, and you know about Clubhouse. That's it, right? And there's a reason for that, is because we've gone out of our way to build our community even way ahead of the product.
Got it. And so, do you think, in this space around the interactive audio, how much value do you put in having a smaller engaged audience versus having millions and millions of people who just casually use your
yeah, that's a really good question. So smart money is, you want to have usage, especially with consumer products. You can have 100,000 people download your product, sign up, and never come back. Like, you don't want that. But if you have 1,000 people, spending 8 hours a day on your product, that's like what you got there, man. That's something of value. And I think that's what a lot of people didn't understand with Clubhouse, was that, how do you have 1,000 users and you're able to raise $10 million? Well, it's because those 1,000 users were spending a lot of time on the product. And so for us, we're going out of our way to ensure that, the community is small and tight at the start, right? People are comfortable creating content. They're comfortable communicating. We're improving the product as well. And the first thing for us is to build the culture, right? Even though it's an online community, it's still like any other community, right? Where you have to have ground rules, you have to have a culture, you have to have sort of the unspoken rules of how you engage on the platform. And once we've developed that, right, it doesn't take very long. I mean, a few months or whatever. Once you've developed that, cultural layer, then you can start scaling that, because then that core audience, that core user base is going to teach the new users how to use the platform. They're going to be the stewards of how you engage on this platform. And as that grows, I mean, you are going to lose some of the culture as you scale, but without that core, you're really going to collapse very quickly.
Thanks for that breakdown. And I'm curious, you know, it just came to my mind. I really consider Adrian, I know some people may have not seen your Twitter, some of our audience. You are a creative. You are a creative yourself, in my book. And so this is a creative. I look at it as a creative, creating a platform for creatives is the way that I look at it. And so I'm curious, like for you wearing your creative hat, like how do you know if the amount of content you're putting out there is enough? Like that's something that I struggle with.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah. So quantity of content. I think that it's too much when the quality starts to dwindle. I don't think you can ever get enough content, to be honest with you, but get enough good content, now that's hard, right? And so, you know, very much like Twitter, right? Let's use Twitter as an example, right? So if you tweet once a day, you're probably going to go viral once a month, right? It's just math. If you tweet 5 times a day, you're probably going to go viral maybe once every 2 weeks. If you tweet 10 times a day, well, you're probably going to go viral at least once every 2 days. You tweet 20 times. And so like you have to create that muscle of what you think your audience is going to enjoy, right? How you need to deliver it, what time you need to deliver it, and all these things you have to constantly be experimenting with. So I think as a creative, you know, you're always creating content, right? Because you're really building the muscle up of creating good content. You're never going to be perfect, right? And it's going to be based on the mood of, you know, your audience, the state that they're in, the time of day. And so for me, you know, you can't create enough content, right? Like, because everything's really practice, right? And so if I say, oh, well, once you get to 20 tweets a week, you're good, you know, you can tap out and like go do something else. I don't think that like that's a smart move. You know, the smart move is to constantly be working on your craft. And I think that has no end goal. And you can never create enough content, to be honest with you. And if it's good, people will love it and they'll consume it, and they'll consume a lot of it too. And if they're not consuming it, then you need to work on the quality of what you're putting out.
Thanks for that, Adrian. You dropped a couple nuggets there. I was hoping you were going to tell me that I drop enough content, but you
no, it's not enough. I'm sorry. you got to do way more than that. You got to dominate that timeline.
That's hard to do for me. So, so I appreciate that. And like I said, Adrian, for those of you who have not followed his content, Twitter is what my go-to for his content. He is a creative when it comes to that kind of stuff, for sure. So, you know, moving on a little bit, you know, I want to talk a little bit around like how all these platforms and your platform in particular are empowering some of the conversations that we're having now, you know, as a continuation of 2020. Still dealing with the pandemic. We had a lot of conversations around politics, social inequities. Like, how do we leverage these platforms to maximize the ears and the eyeballs that we have right now?
So that's a really good question, and it's good because we've been dominated over the past 10. How long has Facebook been around? Since 2006 or 5.
That sounds about right.
Yeah, so we're going on 15 years now, and they introduced algorithmic feeds probably about maybe 4 or 5 years in. So we've probably been in the algorithmic feed age of probably about a decade. And the reason why it's important to start off here is that the content that you create, you know, is viewership of that content is essentially determined by the algorithm, which is written by, you know, programmers that work at these companies. And so you don't really have a direct line to your audience, right? And so it's very hard to get messages out, right? You know, things can be silenced, they can be delayed. And so the one thing that we have been thinking about is, well, how do we empower people to directly communicate with their audience, right? Without us stepping in the way and saying, okay, well, the content that you just created, Kenny, we're not going to show me that content. We're going to choose who gets to see this. And so what we wanted to do is actually remove that barrier and go back to the days where, you know, if I followed you, right, I'm going to get a notification every time you create content. Now, what our job is to make sure that we have a dial that you can, you know, turn on and off. So, okay, well, I want to hear from Kenny, you know, once a day or once a week, and that's good enough, right? So that's up to you. But it's not up to us to decide who gets to see your content. And it's important because we are basically an amplifier, right, for voices. And if you build your following up and you have 10,000 people that want to hear from you, when you create content, 10,000 people are going to get notified. It's that simple. And I think if you do that, you're able to, almost in real time, allow people to have discourse online that is not throttled by an algorithm. And so when you continue on from last year, what you have now is the ability to communicate with large amounts of people using audio. You're able to communicate with that emotion, that tone. You're able to tell stories and actually move people to respond to what you're trying to communicate. And so, for us, it's really important to not be the arbiters of content. We want to make sure that you have a direct line to your audience, and you're able to communicate with the people that want to hear from you without us interfering in between.
Appreciate that, Adrian. And you brought up some more gems again around just no latency. So having that direct line to your audience. I think of you know, some of the rappers. You think of Nipsey Hussle. Even before him, I think there was a R&B artist, Ryan Leslie.
Right.
He had that idea around having that exactly text connection, and it was like a new idea, but it was like, hey, like you said, like you go through normal social media channels, that's okay, but the way you explained it, I never thought of it that way in terms of that algorithm is like the operator.
Yeah, right? It is determining. Yeah, and the operator's goal is to get eyeballs on ads, right? So you have to remember that as well. It's to keep you on the platform. So it's going to show you what it thinks you want to see, right? Not what you actually want to see, right? Which is two different things, right? And so it's important to not step in the way of allowing people to communicate freely online.
Got it. And next up, just along those lines, specifically for you know, Black creatives, like moving forward, it seems like last year was a shift, like you mentioned, Clubhouse. It just seems like we saw the impact of here's a platform. It's ground zero. Here's what happens when you have some very influential Black creatives up there, and you see kind of the explosion. Like for Black creatives in particular, I'm curious, like how do they like know their worth, or like how do they like bring that worth into conversations moving forward with a platform like Voice Blast?
Good question. So I think that every Black creative knows their worth. The problem has always been distribution, right? And that's why Clubhouse is what it is right now, because people realize, well, there's 8 million people here, and I could potentially reach, 1 million of them if I just stay at this. And so it's always been distribution, right? The voices are there, right? It's really a distribution thing. It's an access thing, and it's a ease of use, right? How fast can you actually grow a following, and how much control do you have over that following? That's the important thing. When you look at what's happening on LinkedIn, I know a lot of Black voices do get silenced on that platform, and there's nothing you can do about it. I've heard of people getting kicked off, and there's no appeal process. And so, there's a fine line to walk here between being parlor, free speech, anything goes, and being, Twitter, which is like algorithm driven, AI, is sort of in charge of what you see and what you don't see. And so what our responsibility is to our creators, right? They keep the platform alive, they keep the people coming in, and they keep the conversation going, right? And so we have to work in partnership with the top creators of the platform to ensure that we're doing everything we can to maximize their voices and to get their message out there. And so that, for us, we don't have all the answers to that right now, but what we do have is we have an open dialogue with our creators that are going to be coming in and making sure that as we build, we build in tandem with them, and we build in a partnership where they get the benefits of actually contributing to this platform and not just us.
Dope. Appreciate you putting that into the core of the business, Adrian. And I know that it's not necessarily the easy thing to do, but like you said, that just makes it that much more inclusive. And then you get that buy-in from the creatives, because as we're seeing on just even when it comes to TV, media, everything right now, there is somewhat of a focus on the creative right now, making sure that they feel whole in a lot of these environments, right? So
yeah, I mean, look, the creators make the creatives and the creators make your platform, right? Period, right? Without creators, I think it's like, what is it, like 100 to 1, or the 90% rule. 90% of people are just going to come into the platform, lurk, consume the content, and leave. And so that 10% of people that actually create content, you owe it to them to make sure they're getting their fair shake.
Got it. And so looking forward 2021 and beyond. We came up with this at the beginning of the season with our sponsor, our partner of Valorant. Brooke actually came up. I'm going to say that she coined this phrase, but it's around world domination, right? What does world domination look like for you in 2021 and beyond? You mentioned some of the funding that you're going after right now and just building out the platform, but what are some specific goals around that world domination that you can share with us?
Wow. Obviously we want to raise our seed round, which is something that we're going to be doing very soon. So I guess that's one way to sort of, that's the fuel in the world domination rocket. But in terms of like users and where we see ourselves going, I think that by the end of the year, we should have eclipsed our first, million users on the platform. It's a huge goal, and there's a lot of work to get to that point. But we think that we've got something special here, and I think that by the time we get to the point where we open up the doors to allow people in, it will just grow very rapidly. And social product can take off overnight. And so for us, by the end of the year, we want to at least have 1 million users, and we want to have a good amount of those users actually active on the platform and actually getting a huge amount of value from it.
Appreciate it. I always put this at the bottom of the screen, Adrian, when my guests. Yeah, we gotta start. We gotta start writing it. Yeah.
We should screenshot that.
Yeah, it. But we gotta start making sure we write down these North Star moments. We'll definitely be tuning in. I know you're doing a heck of a job of marketing, and like I said, just being on social media, building up the buzz for it. And so this 1 million, I know you're gonna go after it for sure.
Yeah, man, we're definitely going to go after it very aggressively, too.
All right. And so, Adrian, I think we had one person that chimed in around your mic drop. Yeah, that was Marcel Wade.
What's going on, Marcel?
Mic drop. I'm gonna say those are 4 mic drops right there.
Yeah, I got 4. I got 4 mics to the source.
At least. But I want to take a step back. How can people, reach out and stay connected, with Voice Blast, all the branding and the things that you're doing?
Yeah, super simple, man. So if you want to reach me via email, it's adrian@voiceblast.fm. I'm on Twitter at the other Cole, TheOtherCole, and sign up for Voice Blast at voiceblast.fm. And then our beta will be opening up next week. So we'll start onboarding users. And that's it.
Thanks for that, Adrian. Again, I am going to just say
there's an S at the end of Voice Blast. So like Voice Blast.
Voice Blast. Let me go ahead and fix that for everybody. But I just wanted to throw out there Adrian's Twitter is like my go-to several times a week.
What's funny? What's funny is I have quite a few people that have reached out like, I'm actually pretty surprised, bro, to be honest with you. Like, people reach out to me like, yo, man, like, I love your Twitter. And I'm like, this is just the stuff that floats around my head. Like, it's like, yeah, no, but it's good. I'm like, okay, yeah, I guess I keep tweeting then.
Yes, please check out his Twitter and all the above, what he just mentioned. Yeah, it's you're creative. I don't know how to say it any other way, Adrian. And I love it.
I'm like a creative engineer, it's like I'm an anomaly.
We got one more person that chimed in around the North Star moments. Appreciate Comma. Again, loving it. That million users. We got to start making sure that we, like you said, Adrian, we take these screenshots, we write them on the board just to take in somebody saying that they're going to get 1 million users. We've had people, other founders say they're going to get $1 million. Whatever that number is, whatever that North Star is.
I'm gonna take a screenshot right now because I'm loving Comma's energy. And Comma, you should connect with me on Twitter for sure. Let me see. Boom, I got that right there.
All right. But in closing, again, I just want to pass it to you, Adrian. Anything you want to leave our listeners with as we look to realize your world domination for the rest of 2021?
Yeah, look, I think that the more important thing for me to say to anybody right now is your ideas are going to sound weird. The better they are, the weirder they're going to sound to a lot of people. And it's very important for you to figure it out for yourself. Like, find out for yourself. If you have an idea, for a business or a product, getting feedback from people is great, but really find out for yourself. And you owe it to yourself to chase your dreams and your vision, and do it one step at a time. It's a huge task. It's sort of a very long and lonely journey, but connect with people who are building as well and try things out. And if it's not working, then pivot, change it, try something else. But you really owe it to yourself. I wouldn't be at this point if I ever stopped. We just kept on going and we kept on changing things and we kept on iterating. And there's something at the end of the rainbow for you, whether or not it's the product that you envision or it's going to be a tremendous amount of knowledge. Either way, like, you are going to walk away a better person. I think everybody should actually do that and embark on a journey like this.
That was just the perfect way to end, everybody. He just gave us one long quotable. Adrian just said. And so on that note, I'm going to just close things out. That was a mic drop moment by Adrian. I appreciate you coming on. Check out Voice Blast, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you, Kenny. Appreciate that. And we got to give our shout out to the third person who's in the back that has been pulling the strings and making this possible. Kenny, I'm gonna let you give a shout out to her.
Yes, Jasiri is our, I want to say, program director. That's the title that she is the invisible hand. Yeah, she is the wizard behind the curtain. She's the one making all these screens move the right way. So appreciate Jasiri as well. And on that note, I'm just going to say thanks for tuning in to the Beyond Normal podcast. All right, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to the Beyond Normal podcast. We can be streamed across all major streaming platforms in addition to YouTube. Come back again.